Hi everyone, this is the second episode of the Saudi Football Fanatics podcast. Today we are talking about significant transfers of the summer and the happenings of the first three rounds. Since this is a huge topic from both perspectives, we will separate the discussion of transfers to two different episodes in order to avoid missing out any important point. The team is unchanged for today. My friends Gyula and András will help us go through the most important questions.
Hi everyone.
Hi everyone, hi guys.
How was your week, guys? What do you think about the defeat against Korea? And maybe any thoughts on the hat-trick of Mitrovic?
Marked for the first question, you can guess not too happy about it, to be honest. But we must not forget that this was only a friendly, as a common excuse. And also that Saudi Arabia played with one of the strongest teams of the continent. However, at home ground, a draw would have been closer to my expectations, especially as Harib and Al-Dafsari both played in the attacking line of Saudi Arabia. Despite this fact, useless and inefficient ball possession characterized the Saudi team, while South Korea got shooting opportunities too easily. But again, this was only a friendly game and a good lesson. I believe such matches can properly prepare the national squad for the World Cup qualifiers, where looking at its group opponents, Saudi Arabia should not have any problem with topping the group. But they have to start winning matches, even in friendlies, because the national squad lost its last 6 matches, including against teams that are ranked much lower, and it does not look good. And this is an alarming pattern that must be reversed.
Yeah, well said, András. Couldn't have said it much better myself. Regarding your second question, Mark, it's obviously nice to see Mitrovic hit the ground running in the RSL, but this should not be very surprising to those who follow the Serbian striker's career. His prime years are still ahead of him, and we can expect that he will challenge some goal-scoring records here in Saudi Arabia, like he did back in England at Fulham.
ادي هنا اللمسه عند روبن نيفيز يلعب العرضه حلوه متروفيتش المترو.
Since we are talking about the Serbian guy, Gyula, could you please share your thoughts about his team and the summer activity of Al-Hilal?
Yeah, gladly. Let me start with some statistics first, though. According to the information published on transfermarkt.com, Al-Hilal was the top spender in the RSL with more than 350 million euros spent on transfers. As a result of this big expenditure, Al-Hilal was only second to Chelsea worldwide, who were spending a mind-blowing amount, somewhat north of 660 million euros. Finally, Al-Hilal is one of the 3 Saudi clubs together with Al-Ahli and Al-Nassr, who made it to the top 10 list of the most spending teams. By the way, in the top 10, there are 6 English clubs.
Yeah, it is very hard to keep up with the pace of the Premier League when we are talking about spending money. I think we can say that the SPL did its best this summer, but still not enough to match the Premier League's unreasonable spending potential.
Yeah, absolutely. But enough of these stats. Let's dive into the transfers. So obviously, all headlines were taken by Neymar Jr. and let's be honest, rightly so. He was signed from PSG for a fee reported to be in the region of 90 million euros, but it is his salary that is even more mind-blowing. According to reports, Neymar Jr. will draw a monstrous salary of around 320 million USD per year. Moreover, if commercial deals with the club are factored in, it is reported that the Brazilian's annual earnings could amount to a whopping $400 million. Quite astonishing. The contract will see him stay at the Riyadh-based club for 2 years. And if you consider the additional in-kind benefits he's reported to receive as part of his deal, like his luxurious palace, then it is quite clear why Neymar's transfer stole the headlines.
Yeah, I believe we can say that he was welcomed with open arms. He literally arrived the country on a golden throne. No jokes here. He sat on a golden throne and flown into his palace as a true conqueror.
Quite an entry to the RSR. Well, although Neymar was the top signing, if you scroll through the list of arrivals, several top players joined Al-Hilal this summer. Clearly, the Riyadh-based team has been building a brand new starting lineup for this season, and almost every position was massively strengthened while no major departures are reported. While everyone is talking about Neymar, and I think rightly so, and his outrageous salary, obviously, I think that the signing of Malcolm and Mitrovic are at least as beneficial and important to the team. We are talking here about two proven goal scorers who are still very much at their prime age. So their signings clearly rebuff a common critic against Saudi teams that players are joining at the end of their careers to collect massive salaries to boost their pensions. Well, this is clearly not the case here. So, by the way, while neither Malcolm nor Mitrovic is a star name, quote unquote star name, you would expect for big money, it seems they are both great investments already as they hit the ground running and scored 5 goals respectively. Um, on the other hand, we could spend the entire episode by detailing the great business Al-Hilal did this transfer window, but let's just wrap it up and unfairly and briefly with the list of the arrivals so that we can talk about other teams too. So the arrivals, Bono from Sevilla and Mohamed Al-Rubai were signed as new goalkeepers. Kalidou Koulibaly from Chelsea and Hassan Timbakti from Al-Shabaab joined to bolster the defensive options. And Ruben Neves from Wolverhampton, Sergei Milinkovic-Savic from Lazio are the two great midfield arrivals. Quite an impressive list of signings, if you ask me.
Yeah, agreed, Yula. Just one question from my side. So Hilal is still undefeated, but was not able to win their first match in the Aegean Champions League already with Neymar. What do you think? Is this the first sign of an upcoming bad form, or just a bad day for the Bites?
Obviously, I would be a little bit more careful with drawing conclusions so early in the season. Although you would expect much more flexibility from superstars like Neymar, especially looking at his outrageous salary. But do not forget, please, that this is an entirely new league to Neymar, and he has just recovered from injury. So I would rather say it was just a bad day, but obviously, time will tell.
And another question, and of course, I just lied before because this is the second one. Is it possible that the Brazilian remains healthy for the whole season, or surprisingly, he will get injured around his sister's birthday again?
I would vote for injury.
Uh, yeah, I think me too. Okay, Yula, thanks then. After Hilal, I assume that we should also talk about one of the biggest rivals from Riyadh, the team of Cristiano. Andrich, what do you think?
Top team, top team, absolutely top contender with the greatest leader. I would be very surprised, to be honest, if they would not finish at the podium. Moreover, as the wheels seem to be in an accelerated motion in the blue and yellow part of Riyadh now, especially when looking at the chemistry between Ronaldo and Mane, I believe they will present a very strong claim for the league title this year. But to explain why I believe that Al-Nassr has great chances to win the league this year, let's look at their summer transfers. Nasser has been strengthened in all parts of the team. The team is centered around Ronaldo, obviously, but compared to last year, now he has brutally powerful supporting divisions. Needless to say that because of this, we expect even more goals from him than last year. He's probably the top favorite for the top scorer title, as in all the leagues where he played in his career. But obviously, the likes of Benzema, Firmino, or Hamdallah will have a word or two to say about this. But let's see the supporting divisions I mentioned earlier. One of the best signings of the whole SPL in the summer was Mane, without question. He's not only a world-class winger, but he is still at his best age and most importantly, a perfect fit next to Ronaldo. It took only 1 or 2 matches for him to reach a perfect harmony with Ronaldo, and now they are formidable together. They will be an iconic duo in the SPL for sure. Al-Nassr signed serious reinforcements at the midfield as well. By stabilizing the midfield with players with top ball control abilities, they will be able to dictate the rhythm of their matches and even to create the best possible scoring chances for Mane and Ronaldo. Brozovic is one great name who arrived to Riyadh, and he is organizing the game very calmly and efficiently. After the arrival of Otavio, the other great signings to the midfield, Brozovic lies deeper on the field and organizes the game from depth. Otavio, one of the best players of the Portuguese league last year, is playing in quite a free role in his attacking midfielder position, responsible for key passes and breaking the opponent's lines. He is also at his best age.
Yes, I think it is just another example that not only veterans chose the Saudi League, but players in their prime as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just as I said back at Al-Hilal, a lot of quality players joined the Russian Saudi League at their prime ages. But sorry for the interruption, Andrich. Anything else you would like to mention regarding Al-Nassr?
No problem. I mean, it's important, I believe, for all the our listeners to understand that it is not true that only the older players choose Saudi Arabia as the next chapter of their career, because this is simply not true, and we will provide many examples for that. So if I want to continue with the midfield, we should not forget about the signing of Seko Fofana either. However, I would move to the defensive line as last year, if you remember, this was the weakest component of the team, and this was strengthened also heavily. The largest signing is definitely Laporte from Manchester City. What a huge signing to the central defense of Al-Nassr. Together with Telles, signed from the Red District of Manchester, and together with the properly performing Sultan Al-Ghanam and Al-Fateh, this is now a defensive line which can aspire for championship.
And what do you think, Andrich? Could the Arab Club Champions Cup affect all of their season, or was it a problem only at the beginning of the year? Will Nasr be able to catch the big ones?
Of course, the Arab Club Champions Cup, which called now as in 2023 as King Salman Club Cup, consumed many resources of Al Nassr, and this is obvious by looking at the poor start of their season. But please do not forget, this was a historic success for this team at the first 2 rounds. So equaling 0 points in the first 2 rounds was a cheap price to pay for it. And no one should think that no one else will lose points. But let's talk about this later.
Until then, I have another question which could be important and useful for our followers as well. So, do I understand correctly that Nasr has now the maximum number of foreign players? Is there any kind of rule for that in the league? And what about the previous year stars like Talisca?
Yes, good question, and yes, they reached the limit, and this also answers your second question that indeed there is a rule for that. And the greatest challenge for Al Nassr in this summer, I believe, and not only for Al Nassr but all for the big spenders in the league. So the greatest challenge in this summer was for them was probably the limitation on the number of foreign players in the squad. As per the SPL regulations, only 8 foreign players can be registered for the league matches. Al Nassr builded its squad cleverly, strengthening all lines of the team equally. But still some question arose, like what would happen with former stars of the team like Anderson Talisca, by referring to your third question. It seems now that Talisca kept its place and remains in the team, as Nassr managed to keep him within the 8 foreigners registered. But important to note that for the AFC Champions League, even stricter rules apply, and only 5 foreign players, and plus 1 from Asia, can be fielded during a football match. As Al-Nassr starts its AFC Champions League campaign today, and we are not aware of their current starting 11. They are starting their Champions League campaign today in Tehran against Persepolis. We will see who will be dropped from the squad this evening, subject to the decision of the manager, Luis Castro.
Thanks for the explanation, Andrish. Finally, I think I understand the foreign player rule. But for now, enough of the Giants of Riyadh, and talk a little bit about one of the contenders of Jeddah, namely Al-Ahli. It is hard not to speak about them since they bought almost a whole new team, and not only from the Premier League, but decisive players from Serie A and La Liga as well. They followed the basic rule and bought a good goalkeeper, or maybe not, who knows, after last year's performances from Mendy, who was not even the starter keeper of Chelsea during spring. Ahli also strengthened its defense by buying Ibanez from Roma, Alioski from Fener, and Demiral from Atalanta, beyond some solid Saudi players from their rivals like Saad Balobaid from Al Tawun.
Although it's worth mentioning that until now, the loss of Balobaid is not reflecting on the results of Tavun in the SPL.
Yeah, that's true. But we will talk about that later, I think. So, just to continue with Ahli, the two biggest new names on the midfield are the rising star Gabri Veiga from Celta Vigo and the former Milan star and role player of Barca, Franck Kessié. A lot of stars question the decision of Vega to choose the SPL. Just remember the tweet of Kroos. However, I think that he could be a long-term investment of Ahli. He is only 21, and if they can keep him, then he could be the leader of the team in the coming years. And if not, then they can sell him also for a huge amount. Either way, they made a good choice with him. I'm sure about that. Also, do not miss out on Otaif from Al-Hilal, another signing by which Ahli was able to weaken one of its opponents for the Champions League spots or even for the gold medal. And as I mentioned last week, there is the new formidable attacking trio of Ahli by Al-Nabit, Al-Rashidi, and Al-Buraikan. Of course, I'm just kidding. They are important, of course, and these steps are followed the above to weaken the opponents in the league. But of course, I thought of the French dribbling master on this level, Sam Maximin, and last year's UEFA Champions League winner Mahrez, and of course, one of my favorite strikers, Bobby Firmino. If all of them remain healthy for most of the season, I think this could be the strongest attacking side of the league, maybe even stronger than Hilal's or Nassr strikers. In 6 rounds, these three have 6 goals and 6 assists altogether, but I'm sure that their average will be much higher than this one.
Yeah, quite an impressive attacking department for sure. I think any teams would be even happy with their second line you were mentioned, like Albraiken is really a great player.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Can they become the strongest team of Jeddah, or is the strongest team still Al-Ittihad? I know it's a difficult question, sorry about it.
Yes, true, that's a difficult one. Um, I think if we check only on the names of Al Ahly, then the answer is yes. But for now, Etihad is a much more complex team whose core is together for years, while Ahly just got promoted to the first division. Also, Etihad, also were able to add several stars to their strong core. It is enough to mention Karim or Kante. So it is possible, but I would be surprised that it would happen already this year.
Russian!
Russian,
Russian!
Russian,
Russian!
Russian, Saudi League. And now I think enough from Akli. And after the big clubs, we should move on to the smaller teams. And for that, let's start with Al-Fayha, which cannot be defined as a great spender yet, as they only spent around 8 million euros in this transfer window. Although they did not spend much, but they used that money in a clever way. They almost replaced all the expenditures with 10 signings, mainly on loan or as a free transfer. Their most valuable signing, on loan of course, is the left back of Al-Nassr, the Ivory Coast international Conan, who may become redundant in Riyadh after the signing of several other internationals, just like mentioned by Andris before. Beyond Conan, Al-Fayha mainly strengthened their attacking by the signing of an ex-Rangers forward Sakala, who already proved himself with 3 goals and an assist, and also arrived an other familiar face, or maybe not so familiar ones for some of you, Onyekuru, who previously played for Anderlecht, Everton, and also for Monaco. He received the jersey number 7, which shows that they intend to give him a major role in this season. Also, a familiar name, or not, who knows, from Florence and the Morocco national team, Abdelhamid Sabiri, who arrived on loan. Contrary to the previously mentioned ones, he only played one match so far since he joined the team on the last day of the transfer window, but I'm sure that they plan to give him the chance as a starter player throughout the season. Back to the money part. 8 million euro is not a big number in today's game, but I think we can agree that 0 is certainly lower than that. Why am I telling this? Because 0 is the income of Al-Fayha in the transfer window, according to Transfermarkt, since most of their players left for free in the summer. Also, it is important to mention that except for one player, all the other departed players were above 30, while most of their arrivals are in their 20s. So they were able to freshen up and made the squad younger than before. Uh, as I've already mentioned the name of Al Buraikan in connection with Al-Ahli, but I think we should talk about his former team as well. Gyula, could you please share your thoughts regarding the summer of Al-Fateh?
Yeah, happily. So, in case of Al-Fateh, let me start with their new manager, Slaven Bilic. A great player and a good manager. Despite his relatively young age, I think he endured very successful spells as the manager of the Croatian national team and West Ham United in the English Premier League. If you check his statistics, as a West Ham United manager, he broke several records with the London-based team. The highest number of points, the highest number of goals in a single season, the least defeats and the least away defeats too. And this led to West Ham qualifying to the UEFA Europa League in the 2016-2017 season. So although his most recent records are not that impressive, time is still on Slaven's side, and his appointment really shows that not only the so-called Big Four teams are doing great business, and that the quality of the Russian Saudi League is improving in general and overall.
Jula, not that I'm not interested in the workings of Mr. Bilic and West Ham United, but could you please wrap this up and start speaking about the question and about the transfers?
Sorry for diving in. So as regards the transfers, we have to start with the departure of the already mentioned Saudi international striker Firas Al Buraikan to Al-Ahli. The transfer fee was in the region of 10 million euros. The former Al-Nassr man scored 32 goals from 62 appearances, 4 of which came at the start of this season from 5 appearances. So he's really a goal scoring machine, and he is going to be a big loss to the team. However, while there were several additional departures, the good news is that apart from him and winger Ayman Al-Kulayev, no established first-team players left the club. So although there were no big money incomings, another good news that the club strengthened cleverly, in my opinion. Belgium international Jason Denayer joined on a free transfer to revive his career at Al-Fateh. And while this might be a gamble considering his lack of game time last season in Dubai, he could be a really great player for the team. And additionally, Al-Fateh signed Cape Verde international Giannini to replace their departing top scorer. While the fans might have expected a bigger name to replace Al Buraikan, Giannini certainly knows the league as he scored an impressive 28 goals from 43 appearances for Al-Ahli between 2018 and 2020. So he could be a real bargain and a great replacement for Al Buraikan for just around 1 million euros. Further incomings include veteran Armenia international midfielder Lukas Zalairan, who was, by the way, the club's most expensive signing, commanding a transfer fee of 2.75 million euros, and centre forward Abdullah Al-Mogren joined from Al-Ahli, and we should also mention the loan signing of Saudi international midfielder Mukhtar Ali from Al-Nassr. So overall, I think Al-Fateh did some smooth business this summer.
And that's true. That's true. But so did Al-Wehda. And they needed it, amongst others. As last year, they were dangerously close to elimination, even with counting with the league extension. They remained in the first division, clearly, but I had a feeling that they really played with fire. Things like that cannot be acceptable this year. I believe that's the strong instruction of the management. This team will also be introduced in detail, of course, in a later episode, like all the rest in this podcast. Now we are only focusing on the transfers. For only 1.2 million euro, they signed the Moroccan Javed Al-Yamik, the center back of Valladolid, the team that was relegated from La Liga last year. Moreover, in the course of a free transfer, Saek Al-Movalad from Al-Ettifaq arrived, another defensive player to the team. Last year, their main problems were not to be found in the defensive lines, but in the front lines. So I believe with these signings, their defensive line became stable enough to maintain a mid-table position. But this certainly requires strengthening the attacking lines as well. And Al-Wehda obviously realized this and made a huge transfer free of charge. They acquired Igalo from Al-Hilal, who already scored his first goal against Al-Tae as a substitution, and it was followed by a hat-trick this weekend against Damac. Al-Wehda will rely on Igalo in terms of scoring goals, and they can certainly do so, given that the Nigerian national scored 19 goals last year and become third on the top scoring list.
Yeah, I mean, I need to correct a mistake. Igalo can be familiar to English Premier League, mainly Watford fans, and why I mentioned I made a mistake is that I failed to talk about him as he was a major departure from Al-Hilal, but you know, the arrivals are simply so strong that you keep forgetting important departures, even as important as the third top scorer of last season. Sorry for interruption.
No problem, Gyula. I'm here to help, as always. Apart from the earlier mentioned players, others arrived as well. To name some of them, Al-Wehda signed Vito van Crooij from Sparta Rotterdam, and they also provided first-team contracts to their U23 players, Nawaf Al-Hafsawi and Sattam Al-Tumbukti. They are considered as bench players yet, but it is no coincidence that they were brought up from the youth team. It is good to see that Al-Wehda also relies on its own young talents as well. As regards the departures, we can only speak about free transfers. So we can say that out of 1.2 million euro, Al-Wehda nicely strengthened its team by stabilizing the defense and signing Igalo to solve the team's goal-scoring problems. But to be precise, let's name some of the players departing Al-Wehda this summer. Amongst others, we can name here the left winger Gerson Rodriguez, who relocated to Sivasspor. And we can also name the former right winger Karim Yoda, who departed to the second division to Al-Adalah. They played quite regularly last year in the attacking lines of Al-Wehda, but they were short of goals. So Igalo must be able to compensate the lack of their contributions this year. From the defense, Amiri Kurdi departed to Al-Riyadh, but his place will be perfectly covered by Al-Movalad, mentioned earlier. The only significant problem maybe the departure of Al-Jaizani to Al-Riyadh, whose left back position was not covered by any major signings this summer. So this position has to be held and managed by the young but talented Islam Hafsavi, most probably.
Okay, thank you, Andris. I think we know everything about Al-Wehda summer now. Let's talk a little bit about Damac.
Yeah, and there is quite a lot to talk about because there was quite a lot of transfer movement at Damac. Although it's a trend in the lower teams, but I mean, out of the top four, but let me just mention that most of the incomings and outgoings were free transfers here too, in the case of Damac. There were two new signings, however, who actually commanded a transfer fee. Romanian attacking midfielder Nicolae Stanchiu joined from the Chinese Super League for a fee of 2.5 million euros, and the most expensive arrival was Hassan Cisse from Italian side Lecce for 2.8 million euros. Those of you who are familiar with Swiss football, where he played several seasons earlier in his career, should already know the Gambian forward Cisse, who is expected to lead the line for Damac this season. And there is actually one more player who could be familiar to the followers of English football. Former Tottenham winger George Kevin Nkundu joined from Besiktas on a free transfer.
Until now, I believe that I follow the Premier League, but to be honest, never heard of this guy.
Well, it's obviously your fault. But let's continue with the midfield of the Damac team because the midfield options were further boosted by the arrival of Egyptian midfielder, veteran Tarek Hamid. Regarding the departures and outgoings, we should mention left back Abdullah Al-Ammar, who joined fellow Saudi side Al-Ahli for a fee reported to be in the region of 2.74 million euros. Although he is yet to feature for his new team. But there were quite a lot of departures, just to name a few, really. Erasal veteran Mansour Hamzi joined Al-Khalai and Ibrahim Al-Nakhli joined Al-Tai. So quite some first-team players had to be replaced, and this year's Damac is looking very different from last year's team. So manager Cosmin Contra had quite an eventful transfer window. Early just talked about the main talking point, and it will be a no easy task for him to repeat last year's mid-table finish.
Yeah, agreed, Yula. And now I think it's time to go back to Riyadh and have some thoughts about the newly promoted team, thanks to the increased number of teams, as you already know, since without that, Al Riyadh would still be in the second division. Just like most of the other teams, and contrary to the media slogans, Al Riyadh was able to sign a lot of quality players for a relatively low fee. The most familiar name could be Huami from Real Betis, who arrived on loan for 1 million euro, which is the total spending of the team in this transfer window. All the other players, 17 to be precise, came in the framework of free transfers. Beyond Huami, Al Riyadh mainly targeted players from the second divisions of the European market and domestic players from their rivals in the SPL. Most of the new players are around 30, so contrary to Al-Fayha, they try to sign more experienced, complete players instead of younger ones. I think it proves that their main goal is to avoid relegation and stay in the first division. And after that, they can think about the long-term plans with maybe younger players. After 6 rounds, they conceded the most goals and they are in the relegation zone. But the lower table is really tight. The 10th Al-Fayha is only 2 points away from the relegation zone and Al Riyadh itself. On the departure side, most of the players left for the Yellow League, which is the second division of Saudi football. So I think the bosses of Al Riyadh possibly thought that these players could not meet the requirements of the first division, but based on their current status, they might have thought wrong. And now speak about another team from the relegation zone. Andris, what happened at Al-Hazem in the previous month?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Al-Hazem is a team that is peacefully commuting between the first and second divisions from year to year. 2 years ago, they were relegated from the SPL, but last year they finished as runner-up behind Al-Ahli, and thus easily claiming rights for the first division membership this year. But they probably want to stick to the SPL now, so let's see whether their summer transfers will help them in this quest or not. They had many signings, but only one of them costed them cash, exactly 1.5 million euros. This player is Faiz Selemani, a left winger signed from the Belgian Kortrijk side. The rest of the signings, though, are free transfers, which is quite common, as you could heard in any smaller teams, let's call them that way. But Al-Hazem also performed many loan transfers, many loan transfers, which is the usual method of teams newly promoted to the first division. Let's introduce a couple of these players, starting with Toze. Toze was a free signing player earlier. He played for Porto and Guimarães as well. And now his role will be to keep Al-Hazem on the first division as a central attacking midfielder or even in a striker position, as we see the example based on the first matches. Al-Hazem made a new signing as goalkeeper as well, namely Ayman Dachman, who arrived from Tunisia. Also, I have to mention Talal Al-Abshi, who arrived from Al-Ahli, but not yet fulfilled the dreams of the management of Al-Hazem. And after the first matches, he is now sitting on the bench of the team. But the season is very long, and he will have his chances for sure to prove himself. Al-Shamari, who survived the last year relegation of Al-Batin by transferring to the newly promoted Al-Wehda, what a true survivor this guy is certainly considered as a starting team quality player. However, he still owes the good performance to the management. One of the best signings so far seemed to be Badamosi, who arrived from Čukarički. Badamosi immediately claimed his position as starting striker and already scored against none other than Al-Nassr. Although, as a side note, I have to mention that Al-Nassr paid this goal back to Al-Hazem 5 times. Another seemingly good signing is Bruno Viana, who arrived from the Brazilian Coritiba in the course of 1 year loan in the course of a 1 year loan agreement. However, to leave the best potential signing as the last one, also as a result of a 1 year loan agreement, and also from Brazil, Al-Hazem acquired Vina, who is playing as winger or attacking midfielder and already scored twice, once against Al-Ahli and once against Al-Khalay. More importantly, the latter one earned an important point to Al-Hazem. It seems that the main challenge for manager Felipe Gouveia will be to find the most capable starting 11 and playing structure adjusted to the abilities of the new arrivals. Accordingly, Felipe Gouveia is constantly experimenting with new setups, but the time is slowly running out. We are still in October, and they must start, we are almost in October, and they must start gathering points soon if they want to remain in the first division.
Well, thanks, Andrish. I agree. I just only one quick question. This Čukarički seems familiar. Aren't they one of the opponents of the famous Hungarian team Ferencváros?
Yes, indeed. Very, very good observation. They are in the same group in the European Conference League as the best team in Budapest, the green-white side of Ferencváros, the 9th district.
Okay.
من مسافة بعيدة رونالدو يسدد رونالدو صاروخ ماديرا يسجل
So now, since the clock is ticking, we should continue with the happenings of the first 3 rounds. But don't be upset, we will get back to the transfers in the next episode and won't miss the ones like Benzema, Kante, Henderson, Carrasco, and even the Premier League legend new managers. Of course, we won't talk about all the games for now, but mainly about the most important results, surprises, or even disappointments of the first rounds. Not so surprisingly, the league is led by Al-Hilal currently, following by Ittihad and Al-Ahli, and with Damac, Riyadh and Hazem in the relegation zone. Guys, what were the most decisive or dominant points of the season for you from the first 3 rounds?
Okay, let me just start this and just to quickly wrap up the events of the first 3 rounds because we are running out of time. We could see flawless starts from Al Ittihad and Al Ahli, and Al Riyadh on the other side of the table was the sole team unable to collect any points from the first 3 rounds. I would add that Al-Nassr's somewhat weaker start to the new season was a bit of a surprise, probably to many of us, but they have a nice excuse of winning the Arab Club Champions Cup.
Indeed, that's a good excuse, and they will get many more points. But I don't want to defend them. I will go back to other topic here, which is Al Tavoun. I have to mention that they started the season very strong. This is mainly thanks to their very, very stable defensive line. They scored only 4 goals in the first 3 rounds, but only conceded 1. So they remained unbeaten by that time. Al-Riyadh, as mentioned earlier, only qualified for the first division because of the league extension, so they can be the #1 guest for anyone for the relegation zone. However, they started their campaign very convincingly by beating Al-Wehda and drawing with Damac. This was followed by an obvious defeat from Al-Ittihad, but if they keep collecting points against smaller opponents, like in the first 2 rounds, they will have every chance to remain in the first division.
Yeah, these are quite good additions to the general summary I started with. But let's talk about a little bit about the personal performances as well. So we could see the new transfers and the likes of Malcolm and Firmino starting their Russian Saudi League careers in an impressive fashion with hat tricks. And it's also interesting fact that San Maximan's plane barely arrived in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but he already started his new chapter of his career's new chapter with a goal to his name.
Okay, that's true, Dula, but let's not forget about the local legend Hamad Allah, who is still on fire since last year and could be a top contender to be the top scorer this year as well. One thing is for sure from my side, I just love to watch him play football. Perfect striker with beautiful goals. And if there is no other points from your sides, I think that is all for today. Thank you again for following us. And if you like this episode, please follow our Saudi Football Fanatics channel on Spotify as well. Next week, I think we will continue with the transfers of the remaining teams and with the summary of the next 3 rounds. See you soon.